As a doctor, I see unwell patients every day, and what shocks me the most is how many of the conditions that I treat are preventable and how much our health when we're young impacts our quality of life later in life. As a result, since becoming a doctor, I've been forced to become a lot more health conscious, and I'm going to be sharing with you the health habits that I've adopted so that hopefully you can have improved physical health, improved mental well-being, and an improved quality of life now and later in life. Now, despite all the marketing around multivitamins, the only vitamin that I take and the only vitamin that I would recommend my patients take is vitamin D. Now, a lot of people assume they need a whole cocktail of vitamins, but the fact is, if you're eating a well-balanced diet, your body will do a perfect job at regulating these. And in fact, oversupplementation can be harmful. Now, why do I recommend adults take vitamin D? That is because during the winter months in the UK, 40% of adults will be deficient in vitamin D. Now, that is because between the months of October and March, the UK doesn't receive enough sunlight to activate the vitamin D that we've consumed. And vitamin D is essential for helping our body absorb calcium in order to maintain our bone strength, in order to reduce our susceptibility to infections, which is already raised during these months. And some research has even shown that it can positively impact our mood to reduce the risk of seasonal affective disorder. That is why I recommend that between the months of October and March, you take a daily vitamin D supplement. Now, let's look at some examples of where oversupplementation of multivitamins can be harmful. Let's take vitamin A, for example. It's often marketed as having the ability to improve your vision and the appearance of your skin. But the fact is, you will get enough vitamin A every day from things like eggs, cheese, and milk. Males require around 700 micrograms a day, whereas non-pregnant, non-breastfeeding females require around 600 micrograms a day. Now, if you look at some of the supplements that are available, they contain almost 4 times as much vitamin as you actually need. And with vitamin A, the risk of oversupplementation is that it can lead to weaker bones and even liver toxicity. Now, evidence has shown that no multivitamin can reduce the incidence of heart disease, cancer, or cognitive decline. However, I do want to be very clear that if you do have a known deficiency and you have been prescribed a multivitamin or some sort of supplementation, it is important that you take it as prescribed. Now, loads of people spend huge amounts of money on Botox fillers and expensive skincare treatments to reduce the appearance of wrinkles and aging skin. But unfortunately, nothing is more effective than preventative daily SPF use to reduce the appearance of wrinkles, premature aging, and skin cancer. But before we get into this, let's have a look at the different types of ultraviolet radiation and how they affect your skin. Now, ultraviolet B radiation is a skin cancer that causes sunburn and skin cancer, but fortunately it doesn't penetrate windows, so you will only be exposed to it when you're out and about. However, ultraviolet A radiation is the radiation that causes our skin to age and appear older, and that unfortunately does penetrate through windows even on days where it does not appear to be sunny. That is why as a doctor I wear SPF factor 50 every single day, and some dermatologists even recommend that you reapply at midday. And now that we're discussing the realm of skincare, I wanted to add that many people assume that you need a complicated 10-step skincare routine in order to be effective. But actually, dermatologists recommend a simple 3-step skincare regime because this will help protect your skincare barrier. So I like to keep my skincare routine real simple. I start off with a cleanser morning and evening, then I apply a serum which is specific to my skincare concerns, and I finish off with SPF in the mornings and a night cream in the evenings. Now, one of the most shocking facts I've learned is that by the time you hit 30, you stop building muscle, and in fact, you start to lose around 5% of your muscle mass per decade. Now, if you don't actively train these muscles, you will become weaker, you will start to experience balance issues and have an increased risk of fractures. But not only that, it will inevitably affect your level of independence later in life, i.e. how long you can go to the toilet by yourself, how long you can get out of bed by yourself, how long you can get in and out the shower by yourself and up the stairs in your house. And people don't realize how much this affects their quality of life, their independence, and their ability to stay living in their home until they reach later in life. And by the time people do realize, unfortunately, it's too late to reverse. That is why your fitness level at 30 years old is one of the biggest predictors of your future mobility. Now, to stay strong, I recommend following the NHS exercise guidelines, which are 75 minutes of vigorous exercise a week or 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week, as well as strength training at least twice per week to reduce age-related muscle loss. Now, it's not just muscle mass that can affect your quality of life, it's also something known as osteoarthritis, otherwise known as age-related wear and tear of the joints. Here are 3 things that I recommend and that I do myself in order to reduce age-related wear and tear of your joints and improve stability as you get older. I recommend you prioritize low-impact exercise, so exercise that does not stress the joints overly, for example, swimming, yoga, and even cycling. And strength training is equally important because it will help build up the muscles around the joint in order to stabilize it. I also recommend that you invest in your workspace. Now, we're sat at our desks for 8, 9+ hours every single day, and cumulatively that is granted to affect our health. So investing in a good chair, having good posture at your desk, even buying ergonomic accessories such as, special keyboards and mouses can help reduce that wear and tear that you see from working for decades at your desk. I also recommend that you see your physiotherapist as soon as you start to experience any joint pains or issues with your mobility. And actually, as a doctor myself, I think they are the kings of the musculoskeletal system. In fact, recently I've been having some sort of groin hip pain. The physiotherapist diagnosed my hip impingement within like 30 seconds, and looking it up, if I hadn't sort of gotten this checked up and realised that the posture that I was sleeping in was causing the groin pain, it can actually have led to osteoarthritis of the hip prematurely. I also have flat feet, so I'm investing in insoles and seeing podiatry for this, and all of these measures of actually engaging with your healthcare provider can help prevent osteoarthritis and mobility issues later in life. Something that often makes me laugh is when I ask my patients if they're staying hydrated, they'll always say, oh yes, I've had 9 cups of tea today or something like that. And they don't actually realize that caffeinated drinks are actually diuretics, meaning they make you urinate more and therefore make you lose more water than you're taking in. And the same goes for sugary drinks. So although yes, they can provide some level of hydration, there's no denying that water is the best way to stay hydrated. And I really recommend that you get a reusable water bottle like this one. I use this huge iron flask one. It's about 1.7 litres, so I just know that I have to get through one of these a day. And the reason for that is to reduce your microplastic consumption, which also has a huge amount of effects on our health, and it's better for the environment. And a simple way to check that you're hydrated is simply by monitoring the colour of your urine. It should be sort of a light yellow straw colour. And last but definitely not least, I can't emphasize enough that the best time to start therapy is not when you start to struggle, but actually when you have periods of stability. This is because you'll be mentally resilient enough to look at the past and to do the work that therapy asks of you. Therapy can help you process emotions and difficult times in your life, improve relationships, whether that be with your partner, with family and friends, and those at work, and helps to build resilience. Don't forget that there are so many different types of therapy. So if you've tried a therapy that hasn't worked for you in the past, it doesn't mean that you should rule it out. There's short-term therapy, we're talking about a couple of weeks, or long-term therapy that is open-ended. We have therapy that's goal-oriented, so you're specifically working to meet certain objectives, but also therapy that's open-ended and has no real objective. So don't forget that it's worth exploring what's right for you. Now, if you found this video helpful, share it with someone who you think may benefit from some of the tips that I've shared, and comment below what video you'd like to see next. See you in the next one.